All right, here are the video solutions to the review number 2 for Chapter 7 quiz. So the first one is simplify. So first, as you know, just factor. So when you factor the top, you can factor out a 6. You're left with A minus 6 times what is 54, and that's 9. And on the bottom, you have to find factors of 90, positive 90, that add up to a negative 9. So that would be negative 9 and negative 10. Now that you have all factored, you can cancel the common factors, and we're left with 6 over A minus 10. Next one, same thing, simplify. You just factor both expressions, both numerator and denominator, so factors of negative 54 that add up to 3 would be, let's think about this for a second. I guess it's 9 and 6. So B plus 9, B minus 6. Those multiply to negative 54 and add up to positive 3. Now for this one, you have to look for a common factor. They both have a factor of 9 and they both have a B. So I'm going to factor out a 9B. What's left over would be, here would be a B, because 9b times b is 9b squared. And here we're left with 9, because 9b times 9 is 81b. So again, we can go ahead and cancel out the like factors, and we're left with b minus 6 over 9b. Rolling along. Now we're multiplying. So multiplication basically the same as what we just did. Just factor everything, and you can cancel anything on the top with anything on the bottom as long as you've factored everything first. So x plus 2 is a factor in itself. Factors of negative 8 that add up to 7 are negative 9 and positive 2. That was factors of negative 18 that add up to negative 7. Here we have a common factor of 10x, so we're going to factor that out. We're left with x minus 9. And on the bottom, 10 minus, or x minus 10 is just a factor of itself. Now we can cancel anything on top with the bottom as long as they're like factors. So x plus 2's, x minus 9's. Don't cancel out these 10's because x minus 10 is just a factor on itself. So you're done. We're left with 10x up top and x minus 10 on the bottom. That's that. Again, rolling along here, we have this division problem. So we never leave it as a division problem. We're going to change it to a multiplication problem just by multiplying the reciprocal. Now it's a multiplication problem. We're just going to factor. Now there's not a lot of factoring to be done here. 6m squared are already factors. On the bottom here, we have to find factors of negative 20 that add up to positive 1. That's plus 5 minus 4. And then m minus 4 is a factor itself. So now we're going to cancel like factors on top and bottom. There's nothing else to do here. So 6m squared is left on top, and m plus 5 times 1 is on the bottom. And that is all. So we're on a roll here. We'll keep going and finish this up. This next side is addition and subtraction. So you need to get a common denominator. So you notice that 5, they have a common denominator, but it is minus. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to plus a negative. When you do that, remember that negative applies to everything up top here. So distribute it. Negative 5x plus 5y. Now, because they already have common denominators, I can just go 4 plus a negative 5y, or 5x, plus 5y, and that's all over 12y. And then you add like terms. But it turns out here that there are no like terms on the top. So we're done. Make sure if you did this and are looking at it that this is a plus 5. In other words, make sure you distributed that negative. But we are done here. The next one, I'm going to factor first. Now, this one is not going to be that important to factor because they already have common denominators. But that's good practice anyhow, so I'm going to factor the 3x out. I'm also going to change it to plus a negative. So I have negative x plus 4 up top. And then you'll notice they still have common denominators, of course. So I'm going to add the tops. All over the common denominator of 3x times x minus 6. So we have x minus x, that's 0. And 2 plus 4, which is 6. So I'm done, except if you notice, the reason why it was good that I factored to begin with, because I can still reduce and really cancel out these factors. On the top, we have a 6. On the bottom, we have a factor of 3. So you can divide both by 3. So my final answer would be 2 over x times x minus 6. All right, 2 more to go. Now, these are addition and subtraction that do not have a common denominator. And again, the first thing I'm always going to do is factor. There's not a lot of factoring to do. But now you need a common denominator between the 3 times v minus 2 and the v minus 3 over here. So you know that by looking at it, the first one is going to need a v minus 3. The second one is now going to need the 3 and the v minus 2. So I'm going to 3 and a v minus 2. So when I attempt to get the common denominator here on this first one, I need to multiply v minus 3 over v minus 3. On the second one, now I'm going to change this common denominator to this. I'm just going to reorder. I didn't really do anything. Just to make it look like the other one. I know this is supposed to be a v. But I had to multiply this 4v times this. So times 3 times v minus 2. So this one's taking a bit longer, but it's not too bad. Here I'm going to distribute the 5v. So 5v squared minus 15v over that common denominator of 3 times v minus 2 times v minus 3. And then here, it's going to be 12v, 4v times 3. And then I'm going to have to distribute that as well. I'm just going to do that in 2 steps. You can do that in 1 step if you're very comfortable. So I have 5v squared minus 15v over 3 times v minus 2 times v minus 3 plus distribute 12v squared minus 24v all over that common denominator. And now I can add everything up top over the common denominator. So I'm going to do that, especially since this is a video, all at once. The 5v squared plus the 12v squared is 17v squared. And then negative 15v plus a negative 24v would be a negative 39v. I'm going to do one last thing. Because they both have v's, I'm going to factor out v from the top just to simplify it. And see if there's any cancellations I can do, but there are none because there's no single v's on the bottom. So this is the final sum. All right, so lastly, I have this one. This one looks like it's a little bit easier, thank goodness. You have an x minus a k minus 6 here and a k plus 6. Know that those are completely different factors. So I have to multiply this one by the k plus 6 and this one by the k minus 6 to get a common denominator. So I'm going to do that right now. So again, this one had a k minus 6. I know it's going to need an additional k plus 6. So it has that common denominator. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom. Plus a negative 4k. So I change it to plus a negative. You can see that this one is going to need the k minus 6 to get a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply by k minus 6 on the bottom and, of course, to the top. So now I'm going to multiply the tops out. I'm going to distribute this 3k. I made this an x. I'm so used to doing that, as you may be. So it's going to be 3k squared plus 18k and then distribute the negative 4k. It was important to make this plus a negative, so you remember that. So this is negative 4k squared plus 24k and then finally I'm going to combine everything over the common denominator, which was k plus 6, k minus 6, and we have 3k squared plus 18k plus a negative 4k squared plus 24k, and now just combine like terms. So 3k squared minus 4k squared is a negative 1k squared. 18k plus 24k is 42k. Notice that they both have k's, so just like the previous problem, I'm going to factor that out. As a matter of fact, I'm going to factor out negative k. You don't need to, but usually when your first term is negative, you factor out negative. So I'm going to factor out a negative 1k, so a negative k. This would now be positive k, and this would now be minus 42. And that is it for that one, and that is it for the review. I hope you enjoyed watching that as much as I enjoyed doing it for you. And hopefully you have good luck on that quiz.